everybody. Hello, 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 and welcome to our NCO webinar. It's fantastic to see you all coming in. I am Kath Arlidge. I'm the Artistic and Educational Director of NCO, and I am joined by two amazing musicians today, Anna Lapwood and Linton Stevens, who are both not only incredible musicians, but they are presenters and content creators, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, because as you know, in all of our activities at NCO, there are opportunities to introduce the music, to speak to your audiences. There's also opportunities to create digital material so that we can share the joy of NCO as widely as possible. And we love your ideas, and we're here to kind of stimulate those ideas and get you thinking about what we might be able to do on the courses that are coming up and the activity that's coming up. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen to introduce our amazing guests, and I'm going to kick off with Linton Stevens. Linton, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi everybody, it's fantastic to be here, and some of you I'll see you in a couple of weeks on the course as well. So yeah, I'm Linton and I play the bassoon. I am extremely passionate about playing the bassoon. In fact, ever since I saw a picture of one in a book when I was little, I wanted to play the bassoon. So I think if little me could see big me now, he'd probably be quite proud that I now do this for a job. And I feel incredibly fortunate to do this because not only do I get to make music, but I think it's where I found people who I really relate to as well. So yeah, I play bassoon, and you can see me in this picture at the moment talking, probably telling a terrible joke. Actually, I definitely was telling a really bad joke to the bassoon cohort of 2024's NCO, and they told me that they didn't like my jokes, but they really did. I know they did. Um, so,
First and foremost, a bassoonist.
first and foremost, a bassoonist. Yeah, I think after that, probably second is there you can see. Second is my broadcasting, which kind of I fell into a little bit by accident actually, but it's something I really enjoy and I love because one of the things I found, as well as playing music, that I get a lot of joy out of is talking about music and talking about how music makes me feel and talking about the very human side of music and the way we respond and react and also the way we relate to each other through music. I think that is for me what makes music magical. And I think it's, well, I hope it's what makes me a half decent broadcaster is that I really love to we can talk about the academic side of music and all of the stuff that we study for, for theory exams. But I think it's music transcends language in a way that nothing else does, and I think that is what's really important for me when I think about music is digging into that. So I'm very lucky that I have a job on the radio where I get to not only dig out amazing pieces of music that people might not hear but also to talk about them and to relate to my own experiences and the experiences of my friends. So I feel like I'm an incredibly lucky person that I get to do all of that. And on top of that, as you can see in this photograph where we've all got our big smiles on, I get to go to some really lovely events with really incredible people. So yeah, that's a really fun side of it as well too. The other side of what I do as well is I work for the Musicians Union. So I used to. The Musicians Union is basically it's an organisation that makes sure that when people undertake work as musicians, that they are treated fairly, they're paid fairly, and that they're not taken advantage of. And I think sometimes that can happen with a job like music, especially if you work as a freelancer. That means you don't have any fixed role in any one place. And then there's always people who want people to do music for less than they should, and it's our job in the union to really champion all the work that goes into an individual as a musician, all the hours that they put in to become as good as they are, to become as good as all of you guys are and are on your way to be as well, and to make sure that people respect that and treat that fairly. And the work that I did was around equality and diversity. So yeah, that's a facet of my work that I absolutely love. And then outside of that, as you can see on screen here, I also love to do illustrations. Illustrating is something that I've always done alongside music, and it's a real meditation for me. When I sit down to draw, I feel like the whole world melts away for like 2 or 3 hours while I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing, and that I guess I think music is an interpretive job, but for me, illustration is a creative job, and that's where I really kind of get to take all of the things that influence me and put them into my work. So as you can see on screen here, this was one project that I did, which brought elements of my musicians union work, my illustration, my music, and brought it all together to amplify the voices of women in music who don't get as big a look in as their male counterparts. So that's me in a nutshell. And then this is my little companion. He's not here right now. He doesn't like when I have web chats, so he goes and lies on my bed. But this is Biscuit, and he is the best dog in the world. He's absolutely fantastic. Um, he likes to starfish when he's very, very warm, like you can see there. But he is incredible. The only thing he doesn't like is when I play the contrabassoon. That's a little bit too low for him. But everything else he loves. That's
Thank you
me.
so much, Linton. What a brilliant introduction. Thank you. Now, our second guest is the one, the only Anna Lapwood. Tell us a little bit about you, Anna, and your musical journey.
Well, the first thing to say is I like to starfish too. I identify with Biscuit quite strongly in that last picture. That is me. Yeah, after a concert in particular, it's an essential part of the concert experience. Yeah, I'm Anna. I'm an organist, and I also do conducting. So I work at Pembroke College in Cambridge, and I'm director of music there. But I've just chosen to like go for being an organist full time and to move away from the conducting side of things, which is a slightly terrifying moment, but also an exciting moment. So as a concert organist, I basically get to travel all around the world. That's me not playing the organ. That's me from my former days with short hair and as a harpist. I was principal harpist of the National Youth Orchestra, and that's where that photo's from, when I got to perform in the proms a couple of times. And I was also a harpist in NCO back in the day, and I loved it so much. I think it was one of my first times playing with like a really good orchestra, and I will never forget the first rehearsal. We were doing Chabrier España, which is a great piece, and I'd been in school orchestras obviously, but the sound from that orchestra when we first started playing, and the way it like comes up through the stage and everything starts vibrating, it just was absolute heaven. And yes, I think when I retire I might go back into being an orchestral harpist because it's something I miss a lot. That is the Royal Albert Hall. I'm guessing some of you have been to the Royal Albert Hall, maybe performed at the Royal Albert Hall a couple of times. It's one of my favorite places in the world. I'm lucky enough to get to be an associate artist there. And what that means is slightly weird. It means that they let me in the middle of the night. At the moment, it's quite a lot because I have a big concert coming up. So I'm going in twice a week, and I start at about midnight and I finish at about 6 in the morning. And I rehearse and set up all the sounds that I need for my concerts on the massive, massive organ there, which is one of the largest organs in the UK. Super loud, super exciting, but also super versatile, and has all these beautiful sounds that aren't just like organ sounds, they're kind of percussion sounds. And for me, like since I started working at the Royal Albert Hall, that's when I've really fallen in love with the organ in a new way, because it's such a great vehicle, that instrument, for introducing the organ to more people because it is so versatile. So you can see here I do various bits and pieces of kind of presenting and content creation on different platforms. This is something I did with Classic FM a while back, which was this really complicated video about how the organ works. And honestly, trying to prepare for this was really hard because it is one of the most complicated instruments, if not the most complicated instrument in terms of the mechanics. And trying to find a way to explain that coherently and concisely, and sort of with a video that takes you through the organ as well. It was quite a challenge, but a fun challenge. This is the other side of my kind of performing life, which is sort of got a bit more intense in a really lovely way over the last few years. So I do a lot on TikTok and Instagram. And before I started doing that, I think I quite liked the organ, but I found it quite scary performing as an organist. I hadn't really found my kind of niche in terms of the repertoire that really made me happy and excited on stage. And then I started posting on TikTok because some of my students, my young students, told me they thought I might be quite good at it. And I was like, oh, but I don't dance. What are you talking about? And they told me that it's not about dancing. It's about talking passionately about the thing that you love. And that is 100% true. And the lovely thing for me is that as I started to grow in confidence on there, I started to experiment much more with the music that I was playing, started writing my own film score transcriptions, started collaborating with different artists across different genres. And that has now helped me find the place musically that I feel my heart really sings when I'm on stage, and I just feel so happy. Like those goldfish in a bowl. What a great segue.
Anna, was that you starfishing in one of those pictures as well?
It might have been. Yeah, I did. That was from.
Oh,
yeah, I hadn't even realised that was there. That was after I came off stage in Luxembourg last week, and I was so tired, and I'd finished this massive concert program, and they just wouldn't stop clapping. It was so lovely. But
So
they
you just took a nap on stage.
Well, I did 2 encores, and then they were still clapping, and I was trying to make it very clear to them that I had no more energy for any more encores. So I just starfished, which was quite effective as a technique.
well, why not?
The fish, you don't have any pets now, sadly, because I'm not around in the same place for that long, so it's quite hard to have a pet. But I did used to have 2 fish that looked a lot like that, in fact, called Sleek and Streak. But alas, I accidentally killed one of them because I tried to stroke it and didn't realize that you shouldn't stroke goldfish. And luckily, my dad's a priest, so he led a whole funeral for my goldfish.
Oh, well, there we are. I will come out of the screen share now. Thank you so much. Amazing introductions from you all. So I will come to some questions. So if anybody wants to ask any questions of Anna or Linton, you just have to put them in the Q&A, and I'll come and find the questions and I will ask them. But let's kick things off with presenting, because at NCO, a lot of our children are keen to be young presenters, which is a big part of what we do, and we support them to do that. So let's just talk a little bit about preparing. Anna, do you want to kick us off? How would you, if you were going to introduce a concert, how would you go about preparing?
I think there are various different ways to do this, and people like doing it in different ways. So some people love having a script that they stick to and that they basically kind of have memorized, but they still have it there and they can kind of move away from it occasionally and then come back to it. Personally, for me, I tend to feel slightly more flexible if I don't have a fully written out script, but instead I have my key bullet points, and I actually don't write them out necessarily as full sentences, because I find that can be a little bit restricting. But just write like a really condensed bullet point of each of the important things that I really want to get across about a certain piece of music. So I will often try and look for example, 3 things that I always think people should listen out for in that piece of music. But then I also just try and think of the emotional impact that piece has on me personally, and try and convey that as well, because ultimately I think, yeah, there are cool things to listen out for, but music is all about communicating emotion, right? And I think we have such a powerful thing at our disposal in terms of our own emotions, and helping someone sort of latch onto that and go, oh, it's okay to be feeling like that when I hear this particular piece of music.
That's one of the things that we try and support our young people to do, is to think very much about how it makes them feel. So rather than go to Wikipedia or to the internet to find out about a piece, don't even bother to do that. Just listen to it and think about it and feel it, and then tell us what it means to you. What do you think about that, Linton?
Yeah, I completely agree. So if I'm preparing to talk about a piece of music, it really depends on the context, but I think it's a really good thing to, if you ever have to give a recital, because what it does is it breaks down, just talking to an audience breaks down that barrier of them being in the audience, you being on stage, and this being a very formal environment. And actually, you can invite people in to be part of your performance, which actually I always find as well, if I'm talking about a performance I'm giving, it always makes me feel a little bit more at ease to be a bit more at one with my audience, because you just know they're on your side then when you've had an interaction, rather than coming and it being like, almost like an interview where they're on one side and the other. But when in terms of content, when I'm talking about a piece of music, I definitely will talk about how the piece makes me feel. I'll often talk about how I found my way to that piece. If I'm playing a piece, the first time I played this was with my quintet or this, that, and the other. But I'll also try and find, because I think with classical music, and especially with audiences who don't engage very often with classical music, it can be hard to find a way in sometimes. So often I'll try and find a bit of background about a piece of music that is relatable, or even for an audience that does know classical music, I'll try and find something interesting. So rather than just saying the usual, oh, Beethoven wrote this in 1701, or, well, he didn't, 1701, 1727.
It wasn't alive then, but anyway.
1770 to 1827, I do know about Beethoven. Okay, he wrote this in 1800, and, he did it. That's kind of the thing that you can go and find out anywhere. But if you say, well, he actually wrote this whilst he was on a trip to, somewhere in Germany, and he got really ill, but he managed to finish it. It's something that puts that piece of music in a world that we inhabit, that we can understand. So dates are great, though places are fine, but if you've never been to those places, or you don't know about anything that happened at that time, that can be a little bit wishy-washy. But if you talk about, well, he'd fallen in love with this woman, or he'd done this, or he'd done that, finding ways to just help your audience attach to that piece of music. And what Anna said as well, finding 3 things to listen out for is a great thing to do for an audience who don't engage in classical music usually, because it guides their ear. And sometimes if a piece is long and you don't know the piece and it's unfamiliar, it can help with that.
Okay, we've got a poll. Oh my goodness. This is a poll to find out what Linton's favourite flavour of crisps is. So you have to have a guess. All of you can vote. Is it smoky bacon, prawn cocktail, roast chicken, pickled onion, or ready salted? And we're piling in. Get your answers coming.
These are quite strong flavours, Linton.
They are very strong flavours, actually.
With the exception of ready salted. But no, I'm not. Don't. No comment.
Listen, there's always a ready salted. There's always a time and a place for a good ready salted crisp.
Is that a clue?
81% of you voted. Just a couple more. Okay, I'm going to end the poll, and we're going to find out. There's a definite, or nearly everybody's done it. There's a definite winner here, and I share the results. They think it is prawn cocktail Linton. Did they get it right or wrong?
I'm interested to know what makes them think I like a prawn cocktail, because it's not my favourite. I'm partial to every flavour of crisp that's on there, but my favourite at the moment is smoky bacon.
I was trying to explain to some Americans recently, or Canadians, what prawn cocktail crisps were, because they had all these crisp flavours out, and there was a massive pile of prawn cocktail that none of them were touching. They were like, why would we possibly eat a prawn cocktail crisp? And I was there, like, I am prawn cocktail's biggest ambassador. I think they're the best crisp in the world. And I was trying to explain to them, I was like, don't think of prawns. Don't think of prawns.
Oh my, there's another poll for Anna's favourite ice cream flavour. Raspberry ripple, raspberry sorbet, chocolate, raspberry ripple, or honeycomb. No, all good, but there's a definite
I'm slightly confused, because it says Anna's favourite ice cream flavour is one. What is Anna's favourite place to travel on holiday?
I love.
Is there any link there?
Sorry, maybe she travels on holiday to have her favourite ice cream.
Okay,
who knows?
Great.
But that probably
so
is.
I know the link.
Yes.
I go on holiday to ice cream.
Ice cream.
When I can't go on holiday, I just get an ice cream out the freezer, and then I sit there and shut my eyes.
Holiday.
Like being on holiday.
Perfect. I mean, what would a holiday be without an ice cream? Okay, so there's a definite leader, so I'm going to end. Everyone's voted, end the poll, and share the results. And people think it's raspberry ripple.
Why?
That's that's what I thought as well, Anna. I was like, yeah, Anna's a raspberry ripple girl.
Why would you like raspberry ripple? It's raspberry sorbet, absolutely no question. It's a superior ice cream sorbet, in every single way. It's so refreshing, feels healthy. It's basically eating fruit.
Yeah,
it's a very
one of your 5 a day, I'm sure. Okay, I've got one question. Just a reminder that anybody wants to ask them any questions, please just click on the Q&A button. But I've actually not really a question, but from Christina for you, Anna. I also play the organ and I'm a huge fan of Anna. Please, can you come to Dublin so that I can meet you?
Oh, you know, it's one of the really hard things about being an organist is you want to travel absolutely everywhere. As I say, Linton, I'm guessing it's the same for you. You genuinely want to just like travel to every single place and get to play in all these different places. One of the challenges is that you have to, with the organ, like one of the weird things about the organ, you have to make sure that the organ you're going to actually works for the music you're playing. And you'll know this, Christina, I'm sure, from your organ playing. But sometimes you turn up and it's like, well, the pieces actually are physically not playable on certain instruments. So you have to check all these things in advance. And there's a really fun website called the National Pipe Organ Database. And you can sit there and go through and you literally have to like count the number of pedal notes, make sure there are enough, make sure they're the right colors. It's a bit like picking, like if it's a chamber orchestra versus a full symphony orchestra, that can be the difference between some organs. So yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Anna?
Yeah.
Have you ever got to a venue and either the organ doesn't work or it's really unsuitable for what you were going to do?
I had one where I turned up and on paper the organ was brilliant, and actually when I started practicing it was fantastic. Then halfway in, half an hour into my practice session, so I tend to have about 6 hours the day before to set everything up. Half an hour in, suddenly one of the stops just stopped working, i.e. I was pulling it out and there was no sound coming out, and I was like, that's a bit weird, but carried on. And then about half an hour later another one stopped working, and I was thinking, what is going on? And I rang the organ tuner, they didn't know. By the end of about 3 hours, I had lost, I would say, over half the organ. Like the stops had just, they had gone silent. And it was like there was some kind of evil creature inside the organ being like, he, and just making everything stop. And so it got to the actual concert and I had about a third of the organ left. And I just said, I had to stand up to the audience and say, I'm really sorry. The organ, I don't know what is going on. It's a humidity thing. It's just having a hissy fit. I will play as much as I can, and then we'll do a Q&A. And it turned into a really, really lovely evening. I mean, it was stressful for me because nothing sounded like I was expecting it to sound at any point in the concert. And that is a weird thing mentally when you're kind of expecting a massive crescendo and it just doesn't happen. But it was a really lovely chance to talk about some of the challenges of being an organist. So I think that's one thing to say to all of you, like, things don't always go according to plan. I'm sure, Linton, you've got horror stories as well, but things don't go according to plan, right? And it's all about keeping calm in those situations and thinking, okay, I can't do anything about that, so let's turn it into the best situation we can.
And I think that's a perfect example as well, Anna, of, you know, turning to your audience and saying, hey guys, things aren't quite working how I want them to be, because people love to be let into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it automatically makes them go, oh, I'm part of this. I'm part of, so you just turn around and being like, guys, this isn't working how it's supposed to be. I'm going to do what I can. I'll give you my best performance. And then let's have a chat and make the best of a bad situation. And one that probably turned in, I'm trying not to get into broadcaster mode now, one that probably turned into one of your most memorable concerts.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people were like, oh, it was so cool to be there on that day when the organ broke. And I was like, I'm glad it was cool for you.
Fantastic. Right, let's come on to content creation. So we've had some amazing hits at NCO. We had our 12 Days of Christmas that went kind of viral over Christmas with everyone playing a little snippet of the tune and us joining it all together. We had Cello Olympics that were particularly brilliant. And we also had bassoons on Mission Impossible, which was excellent as well. So could Anna, could you start by telling us what's one of your most successful kind of posts, social media posts, and why would you say?
Well, one of the early ones that did really well for me, which like made me realize the potential of social media, I think, was a video of me counting bars rest in the Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony, waiting to come in and play the massive C major chord. I don't know how many of you know the piece. It's amazing. Go and listen to it. But at the end, the organ sits there and waits for ages, and then suddenly you come in with this huge chord. And anyone who plays an instrument where you have to count loads of bars rest will know that feeling where you're like, even though you know how the piece goes really, really well, and even though you know how to count, that is a very scary thing, because you're like, what if I just forget? What if I just don't come in? What if I just for some reason come in 10 seconds early? Or what if I play a D major chord instead of a C major chord? Your brain does that whole thing. And so I just posted this video, which was, I just had my phone set up in the rehearsal, And it was just trying to give a little bit of the running commentary of what is going through your brain as a musician, waiting for like those iconic moments. And I was doing the whole like de-sweating my hands, and then second hand de-sweat, and then my fingers are on the keys, and then I kept like looking down, then up, then down, and it was like checks feet still exist, check feet are definitely still there, yes, Anna, the feet are still there, and then it's like stares at the conductor and doesn't blink in case they miss. And it was this whole thing, and it got something like 1.2 million likes in the end. And it was really bizarre. I wasn't expecting it, but I think it made me realize that so much of what we can do as a musician is try and bring people behind the door, if that makes sense. The door of like, oh yes, we're all very poised and we never get stressed, we never get flustered, and just show what it is actually like to be a musician. The challenges, the funny bits, the stressful bits, and the stupid mental narrative that is going on for all of us all the time.
Thank you, that's amazing. What about you, Linton? What have been the most successful kind of social content creation that you've had?
Well, I mean, I don't get anywhere near the hits that Miss Lapwood gets. She is a content queen.
A legend.
But yeah, an absolute legend for sure. But I find the stuff that people engage with the most is, for me, it's the stuff that's slightly unusual, slightly maybe a little bit crossover, something that maybe has a link to something they understand. So actually, Anna, you were talking about the Ray concert. I was in that concert as well. You were sat far behind me, but stuff like that. Or exactly as Anna said, things that let people in behind the scenes. So in classical music, we present very poised, very polished, very ready. And one of my favorite memes that I've seen is, it was an illustration of a lady on stage from the audience point of view playing violin, and all the comments are like, oh my goodness, isn't she brilliant? It's perfect. Isn't that fantastic? And then it gives you the performer's point of view, and all it is, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So it's things that let people into that world that, you know, we spend so much time trying to get something perfect, and it isn't always perfect. And people love to see, you know, your humanity behind being a musician. And I think that's when I get the most interaction, is when people see what goes into it, or the funny moments where, you know, you're coming up to something big and then it all goes wrong and everybody ends up laughing. It's those things, I think, the very human bits that seem to grab a lot of engagement.
I totally agree. And I think, like, linked to that, it's funny, isn't it, how whenever you see these viral videos popping off around the place, it tends to be things like people playing a piano in a station or something like that, when someone comes up and engages with them, and it's showing music's power to connect us as human beings. And so I think, like, sitting at the heart of any kind of content creation should be humanity. And it's like, how can we show the most human bits of being a musician, and the most emotionally connected bits of being a musician, because that's what makes people go, oh, that's so moving, or oh, that made me angry, or whatever it is.
And it doesn't matter, you know, how old you are or where you are in your career, whether you've only been playing for 3 weeks, or you've been playing for 10 years, or you've been playing for most of your life. You know, that you can convey that at any point, that humanity.
So, talking of humanity, if you weren't a bassoonist and broadcaster, what would you like to be, Linton? An animator for Pixar, a personal trainer, Jimbro, a conductor, or a medical doctor? Okay, and there's a definite leader outstripping all the others.
I think I know the answer to this one, but if I'm wrong, that's funny.
We'll find out in just a second. Nearly everybody's voted. So I'll end the poll and share the results. And they think you want to be an animator for Pixar.
I'm glad that nobody thinks I could be a medical doctor, which is probably I actually did want to go back and train to do medicine, and I did go back in my 20s when I was a bit disillusioned about music. I went to study, I started an access course to do medicine, got about a month in, and then realised just how hard work it is, so came back to music. But yeah, one of the things I really wanted to do if I wasn't, I definitely don't want to be a conductor, and I don't want to be a personal trainer either. But yeah, I would have loved to have gone gone into animation. I find, in fact, can I share one of my favorite books? Because this is an incredible book for all musicians as well. This book, it's a big, thick book, massive book. It's called Drawn to Life, and it's by the Disney animator Walt Stanchfield. But the reason I love this is, so this is a collection of his lectures to other Disney animators. But the reason I love this is because the messages he talks about really cross into my musical life as well. So there's one section where he talks about practicing hard, and he means practicing drawing every day so that you become a good animator. But the way he talks about it really resonated with me as a musician, and he talks about kind of finding the freshness in what you do every single day. So he says, you know, if you walk to work, take a slightly different route so that you see something new every day, and that the newness of that and appreciating that inspires you. And I try to take a lot of that philosophy into when I'm practicing as well.
Fantastic. Okay, Anna, if you had a superpower, what would you like it to be? Talking to animals, mind reading, flying, or invisibility? Let's see what. Oh, it's very even. People are very, very divided on this. Who knows? I mean, I think they're all quite tempting superpowers to have.
They are quite. I'm just looking at the list. I would quite like all of those, I think.
I have no idea which one you would have picked, Anna, actually.
Do you want to have
to
a
be
guess
fair,
before I share the results?
Yeah, you guess, Linton.
I would say, oh, it's so hard because I can't justify. I'm going to guess, and I'm going to say invisibility.
Interesting.
Okay. Let's see what everybody thinks. So our NCO kids think.
Oh, wow, it's really even.
It's very even, but talking to animals is just ahead. So what is it, Anna?
It's actually flying. I just think it would be so cool. I think I basically just want to be a bird. Like, it seems like such a fun life. You just get to like go, woohoo, off we go. And then the wind just takes you on your way. And I often think that playing the organ feels a bit like flying. So I'd quite like to do that properly. I have been in a microlight, which is the closest I've been to feeling like I'm actually flying.
Wow, amazing. So let's just talk about, do you think presenting helps you to be a better musician? Do you think understanding how to talk and communicate with an audience has actually helped you in any way to be a better performer? Do you want to take that first, Linton?
Yeah, absolutely. Has it made me a better? I don't think it's made me a better bassoonist, and I don't think playing bassoon has made me a better presenter. I think they're two entirely different skills that I've had to, in doing them, realize. And I think this is the other thing about presenting and talking. People think, oh, you just stand up and you talk. Actually, there's a lot of technique to it. In the same way that you will practice your technique for playing your instrument, I've had to figure out what the techniques are for me that I need to get better at in talking publicly. But what it has done is it's made me realize what I do when I stand up in front of people, how my body naturally responds to being nervous, and figuring out things to help me overcome that nervousness. And then I've transferred those over to the bassoon because they're things that I hadn't necessarily thought about. So in terms of the actual playing of the bassoon, that's all still the same. But what it has helped me do is when I stand up on stage, I now think about this, this, and this. And I have a little mantra for when I go on air, especially if it's live. And I've started adopting this for when I play the bassoon as well. So it's take your time, be in the moment, enunciate, and radiate. So it's just putting myself in the best position to do the best I can. And the most important one for me, and the most important thing that I've taken over to my bassoon playing, is to be in the moment. It's to be present enough to know what I'm doing. Because then even if I make a mistake, I'll be like, I don't really care. What it's about is the overall thing that I want to communicate. And it's the same when you speak. So another thing for me is when I was young, I had a stutter and a speech impediment, and it meant that communicating was really difficult for me as a child. And now, as an adult, I know that when I'm in that moment, if I just take a breath, and I urge you to do this if you're in an exam or anything like that. Time feels like it goes quickly, and it feels like it can go slowly as well. But people are there for you to do your best. So step into the exam, take a minute, take what feels like 2 minutes to make sure you're prepared, be in the moment, and then do your best.
I think one of the strange things about public speaking is that people think because we can all speak, we can speak in public. And then you tend to stand up and have a go and it goes badly wrong. And then you think, well, I can't speak in public, but you wouldn't try and swim without learning how to swim, and you wouldn't try and play the bassoon without learning how to play the bassoon. So I think there is something very real about it is a discipline, isn't it? There are ways to learn, and there are ways to practice, and there are ways to think about it and to prepare. What do you think, Anna?
I totally agree. And I also think one of the lovely similarities and analogies is that when you're trying to figure out how to be a good public speaker, I think something that people often come back to is authenticity and being able to be yourself while speaking in public, as opposed to going into kind of really, really formal mode, which can disconnect an audience quite quickly. And I think it's exactly the same with music. I think it's exactly the same as a performer. And so to go back to your sort of original question of how has the public speaking side of things and presenting affected your playing, for me, it's been a very hand-in-hand thing of me figuring out who I want to be on stage and realizing that that can be me, not like a super formal version of me. So I am chaos on stage. I am clumsy. I am just chaotic in every single way. I once went on stage having eaten a banana a little bit too soon before I went on stage, as in too recently. And I had a microphone there and my throat started going and in front of the entire audience. I was like, I'm so sorry, I just ate a banana and it's coming back up. And this whole audience burst out laughing. And it's just like, let yourself be comfortable and free, and then the music making will reflect that. And I think it's one of the hardest things to work out is who you actually are and who you want to be. But when you start to get closer to that, that's when things start to get really exciting.
And I think, if I may, that's a really key thing. So I did a thing for Kath last year, didn't I? When we talked to some of the kids in NCO, some of the young people, and immediately they go into da 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 was born in 1953, da, da, da. And it's finding the way to convey the facts that you want to convey, but convey them as yourself.
Yeah.
And I always think, if I'm talking, how would I say this to my friend? I'd say, oh yeah, well, Mozart, he was actually born in 1770. Beethoven was born in 1770, and he wrote this piece when he was 25. I don't know what I was doing when I was 25, but you know, it's how would you personalize it? Because when you speak to people formally, they'll feel like they're being spoken to formally. But when you speak to people with warmth and you invite them in, then they're already on board with you before you have to touch your instrument, and that's a great place to be.
Isn't there a challenge? Because when you tend to prepare something you're going to say, you write it, or you think about it as written words. But written words, as you were just saying, are quite different to spoken words. You wouldn't say, I once acquired an interest in Shostakovich, which you might write, but you would never say it. So I think I remember that time when we were working, it was basically stripping away those words that belong on a page but don't belong in a conversation. And I think thinking about things as a conversation, even if it's a speech, it's not a monologue, it's always a dialogue, it's always a conversation, isn't it, with the audience who react to you, and it's about bringing them into your space and your world.
Yeah.
One thing
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, I sometimes do a little course on speaking publicly, and you have to remember exactly what you were talking about, Kath. When you've got something written down, you can use big fancy language because you can always go back and read it again if you don't understand it. You can't do that when you're talking, so you have to make sure that your whatever you're saying is linear, and it brings people with you, because the minute you start to lose people, that's when people get bored. So it's having that linear line of dialogue with the audience.
And I was also going to say that something that I find really helpful if I'm doing concert introductions, maybe more so when it's my own concert as opposed to introducing for someone else, but I will, before the concert, I'll sit down and just write out the things I'm thinking of saying, like stream of consciousness, and then I don't take anything on stage with me. Something about having already written it out means, particularly when it's a program that I know well and that I've done before, I know what I want to say about it in my own head. Like I've already had those thoughts, and writing them down just helps your brain go, yeah, you do know what you're going to say. And then you can kind of freestyle it on the things you wrote down, and they're stored in your brain. I mean, I wouldn't suggest doing that if you perhaps have loads of dates to remember or something like that. Maybe take a flashcard with those dates on. Or if it's a super, super intense program and really complicated to navigate, then you might need more sort of visual cues for yourself. But if it's a program you're really comfortable with and actually you have explained it to people so many different times in different ways, you can trust your brain to be able to do that again under pressure.
Can I comment on that, because I'm the opposite of that, Anna.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So I don't because I don't know, maybe because of how I was when I was younger, and I'll often find, especially if I get really nervous, my stutter will just edge back in, and I'll do this, and I'll be in the middle of talking, I'll go and I can feel the word on the end of my tongue, but I'm not able to articulate it. Or worse still, I'll panic and I'll forget just one word that I want to say in this sentence. And this is part of kind of how I've had to train myself, that when the word isn't coming, I need to very quickly pivot and find a different word that will communicate the same thing. But I like to have my script in front of me. And for me, part of the skill has been, how do I write it down but bring it off the page as if I'm saying it? Because for me, having the script there is a comfort blanket that stops me from panicking and then not being able to find my word.
Yeah.
There are any number of ways of doing it. And one other thing that I always find reassuring is nobody knows what you intended to do. So even if it goes left field or a bit of a different direction, and you start to explore something, or you forget a whole chunk of it, nobody knows except you. So you can carry on and come off, and that's exactly what I intended, and wasn't it wonderful? So I think, that's one of the joys of being able to be free and preparing enough so that you can be free. And having said that, go on, Anna, you were going to say something?
Someone said something to me which I found really helpful in both speaking and in music, which is never let them see you bleed. And the idea is that, like, mistakes are going to happen, but never let them see that it's bothered you. And actually, the more you sort of start to apply that, the more it doesn't bother you. And the more you're like, if you're performing, if you're doing anything live, mistakes are a natural part of that. And there's something to be almost kind of like welcomed as a friend and be like, oh, here you are, as opposed to treated as the enemy. The number of times if you make a mistake, the audience won't notice unless you let them notice, because you show that you're really annoyed about this thing. And I think it can be the same in speaking as well. Exactly.
Now, look, that time has just sped by. We've done 45 minutes and it feels like about 5. So thank you so much for all your advice. Could you just each leave us with one tiny short top tip, if you could, to take away about presenting, just for NCO children who might want to present a concert at NCO? Linton, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to my mantra, which I think will serve you in presenting, in music and outside of life. Take your time, be in the moment, enunciate, and most importantly, radiate, because that is the thing that you can do that nobody else can.
Lovely. Thank you, Linton. What about you, Anna?
I think I'm going to give you my mantra, which again relates to both performing and presenting. And this is something a teacher said to me once, which is, learn to be happy with your 60% and make sure your 60% is good enough. Because I think so much of the psychology around this whole thing is knowing what your perfect version would look like in your head, and then being annoyed when you can't achieve it. And the reality is, we are all human beings. We cannot all be the perfect version the whole time. And I think it'd be a bit boring if we were. And so actually learning to be like, I'm expecting 60 and anything above that is amazing. It changes your relationship with the whole thing. It allows you to relax. It allows you to radiate. And it makes the whole process so much more fun.
I had a lovely one that somebody said to me once, which was, better is perfect and perfect is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which it feels very true, because as musicians we're striving for this sort of perfection which isn't real, and we can get to a place that is less than perfect and joyful and communicative and changes the world.
Yes.
So ditch the perfect and go for better every time, and then I think we'll all be in a happier and better place. So I'm afraid we've got to say goodbye, which is very sad. But there's a moment for you to take your selfies if you want. So we'll just lean into the screen and do something a bit silly. So yeah, 3, 2, 1. Great. And we might have some fun selfies from all of you guys out there. So thank you so much, Linton and Anna. You are inspirations to us all in everything that you do in your musicianship and in your presenting. And we look forward to, we're going to see you at NCO next year, I think, Anna. Fingers crossed, all being well. And we're going to see you in a few weeks, Linton, at NCO. So thank you so much for all your wisdom and your time today. And good luck with everything that you're doing and everything that's coming up. And we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.